Collusion. Collusion is when firms in an oligopoly work together, either directly or indirectly, in order to cooperate in order to keep prices high and quantities low. This is not necessarily an illegal form of collusion. There are illegal forms of collusion. There are also legal forms of collusion. There are also forms of collusion that don't really require any sort of explicit agreement at all, which economists will call collusion, but it doesn't have the same legal weight as collusion does in the law. So collusion is whenever firms in an oligopoly work together and end up keeping prices high out of a sense of cooperation. They're cooperating with their competitors in order to keep prices high. This ends up with prices being high, quantities a little bit lower, just like a monopoly would do. So what's going to happen here? So let's go back to our competitive market story. Prices are a little bit high. There's a consumer out there who says, hey, I'm willing to buy a ticket from you if you lower your price a little bit. The airline says, ooh, that's still above my marginal cost. I can make a profit by selling a ticket to you. So what's going to keep me from lowering my price? That's the tension that we're looking at here. Right? I want to lower my price. I would get a profit by lowering my price, but I'm not going to do it. Why? Well, every individual firm has a short-term incentive to break their agreement of high prices. They're sort of agreeing to keep prices high in some way. It could be that they literally called each other up and said, hey, we're going to keep prices high. It could be that they just sort of have an understanding that they're going to keep prices high. But it's in each of the individual firms' interest to break their agreement, right? I just got off the phone with my competing airline. We agreed to keep prices high, but, oh, I could make more money by selling to this person if I just lower my price a little bit. Oh, I want to do it so bad. That's my short-term incentive. But if I do it, my agreement's going to fall apart, right? So I've agreed to keep prices up here. I could make a little more profit by going down here, but if I do that, then suddenly you're going to do the same thing, right? So even though it was profitable for me to sell to that one person, it becomes unprofitable when I consider the fact that my other competitors are going to fire back at me by lowering their prices too, right? And effectively, we're talking about a price war. We've agreed to keep prices up here, and as long as nobody moves, we're all okay. Sort of in a little standoff situation, right? Nobody moves, we're okay. But as soon as somebody does something, it's all going to fall apart, and we're going to get back down to that competitive price, which we don't want to do, right? So I think, oh, I would make more money by selling to you, but you know, I really prefer keeping my agreement with my other competitors. So we're going to keep prices high. I'm going to keep not selling to you. So I'm not going to compete as hard as I could because I'm worried about my agreement falling apart. So this is why this doesn't happen in competitive markets, right? Why do competitive markets just do the same thing? Keep prices high. Everyone's in standoff mode. Nobody lowers their prices because they're worried everyone else is going to lower the prices if they do. Well, the reason that doesn't work is because there's so many competitors, there's no way that somebody doesn't pull the trigger. If you have 100 people in a standoff situation, somebody's going to pull the trigger, even if just by accident, right? And then it's all going to fall apart. So you can't rely on it coming together. So no one's going to assume that it will come together. So you're going to get to that competitive price. But if there's only a few of you, right, that's where the oligopoly part becomes important. If there's only 3 or 4 people, then yeah, you can keep that going, right? You can maybe trust that your 2 or 3 other competitors are going to manage not to lower their prices. And so then you will also agree to not lower your prices. So firms in competitive markets think, yeah, it'd be nice if prices were higher. Let's all get together and agree to raise prices. However, if they did it, only one firm would need to be willing to cut their prices for it to all fall apart. There's no way you can trust that many competitors. But with only a few of them, it's easier to keep together. So if you can agree to a higher price, then you can probably manage to keep that agreement intact, keep it going. So how does this actually happen? Right? How do you actually agree to these higher prices, figure out what they're supposed to be? Well, there's 2 main ways. One is called explicit collusion. This is usually illegal, but you know, it happens sometimes. So firms could just sit down together and agree on what the price is. In most countries, this is illegal, but it does happen. Right? There's been a number of scandals over the years where this happens. You know, it's in their interest to do it, so not too surprising that they would try. There was a big corn price fixing scandal not too long ago, or a while ago. Which had a Matt Damon movie about it. Not too long ago. Have you ever heard of LIBOR? You know LIBOR if you're a finance student? All right, never mind. I won't tell about that one. So you can just agree. That's illegal, but you can do it. Just because something's illegal doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. You can also signal your intentions publicly. You could go on TV and say, I, the CEO of United Airlines, we're going to raise ticket prices next year by $50, right? that is, why would you do that? Why would you announce that sort of thing? Because it lets your competitors know, hey, let's all raise our prices, right? That's not me as United saying, I am going to commit to having the high price ticket in the airline industry. That is me as the United CEO saying, hey, guys, why don't you raise your prices too? We can all raise our prices together. And probably what happens is if I end up being the only one who raises my prices, I'll probably just cut them back down, right? The idea is to get the agreement going. If it doesn't happen, then there's no point. This is usually legal, but this one's illegal. But in this class, again, legality is not our main concern. Another way you could use public pronouncements, you could say, hey, we're going to expand into this new market, which can be a signal to keep others away from that market. So for example, cable companies. There are quite a number of cable companies in the United States. However, they still manage to keep a lot of competition away. If you live in a particular area, even though there are several dozen cable companies across the country, you probably only have a choice between one or two. I include cable internet and cable companies there. Why is that? Well, imagine that you are Comcast or whatever, right? And you go on TV and you say, hey, we're going to open up some new markets in Southern California. Well, that tells everybody else in the cable industry to not open new markets in Southern California because it's sort of been claimed. That's their region. And I'm not going to compete against them in that region. It will let them continue to have a little bit more pricing power in that region. And in exchange, when I announce my new region that I'm going to go into, I'm going to expand into Western Pennsylvania, then they're going to stay away from me, right? It's sort of an arrangement. We agree not to compete with each other by publicly pronouncing. You can also signal cooperation via implicit collusion. So explicit collusion is literally you are saying, hey, let's cooperate together, either publicly or privately, but you're saying it. Implicit collusion requires no such thing. You don't have to say, here's what we're going to do for the cooperation to happen. For example, let's say you're in a market where prices are pretty steady, and then suddenly you raise your prices. Your competitors are going to notice, and it could have the exact same effect as going on TV and saying, hey, we're going to raise our prices, right? If you're Hilton, let's say, you're in an oligopolistic hotel market, so one day you just sort of, hey, you just go on your website and you raise the prices of all your hotel rooms by $50. All your competitors are going to notice that, and then suddenly they're going to want to raise their prices too, because that is their way of cooperating with you, and then you can all keep prices high together. Now, this would all be unprofitable if some firms refuse to raise prices, but it is in your long-term interest to continue to cooperate, and so that's the incentive that keeps it all together. Even though each individual firm has an immediate incentive to not raise your prices so that you can get all the cheap hotel bookers, but you know that in the long run, if you cooperate with everybody else, you're going to be able to keep prices higher, which is going to be good for you. Some examples, lots of examples. OPEC, oil producing countries, they're an explicit cooperation, right? They explicitly sit down together, they have a meeting, they decide what oil prices are going to be for exports from that region for that year, how much they're going to produce as well. So that's an example. Different countries sitting down, coming together. This is what our price is going to be. This is the corn example that I talked about. American farming companies were just calling each other up and saying, hey, why don't you raise your prices? I'm going to raise my prices. Here's what the price is going to be. That was illegal. They got caught. I assigned the podcast Food Cartel, which is septic tank vacuum trucks in Senegal, where they have a higher price. And if you try to undercut your competitors, then they're gonna, you're gonna find your truck broken very quickly. Even though most of the trucks are just sitting around all day unused, right? Why are they unused? Because they've chosen to set a high price but a low quantity. So they've got all these trucks around that they don't want to. It would be profitable to allow those trucks to work, but they don't because they want to keep that agreement with everybody else to keep prices high. Cable companies I already talked about. There's lots and lots and lots of other examples of this.